Hey everyone, it is Grant Winsauer, and
Jack Rody.
here on the Bear Claw Cast, and this is kind of an emergency quick podcast during the firing of Shane Waldron and Thomas Brown being promoted from pass game coordinator to interim OC. Although when you uh, look at the title of his press conference, it doesn't say interim. Uh, we will be discussing what we think we think he brings to the offense, and the downsides of having him as offensive play caller, because there's always good and bad. But before we get into that, we would like to remind everybody to like, comment, and subscribe to the Bear Clawcast here on YouTube and Apple Podcasts, so we can bring you the best Bears content possible, no matter how sad the news may be. So let's get into it. The Bears finally made a offensive play caller change, relieving former offensive coordinator Shane Waldron of his duties Monday, and promoting passing coordinator Thomas Brown. People may remember him as part-time play caller for the Carolina Panthers last season, and his play calling was uh, less than adequate, but he had no weapons to help him with the play calling. And at least when you look on paper, uh, his weapons that he has here compared to what he had in Carolina is 10 times better. Maybe not in terms of what we've seen so far, but maybe that's because Shane Waldron let everyone kind of uh, go at half speed during a game for some reason. What are your thoughts on Thomas Brown being promoted to offensive coordinator, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, it was due time for Shane Waldron to be relieved of his duties. I mean, he was always going to be the scapegoat if this season didn't go well. The offense wasn't performing up to what we all hoped it would. It was pretty much a mirror image of what we've seen the last couple of years with Justin Fields, which is what we were hoping we were going to improve upon this year. Uh, as far as Thomas Brown goes, I really have no idea what to expect. I mean, he was 31st in pass yards last year as a play caller for Carolina, but like you mentioned, last year for Carolina was a total mess, and Frank Reich was an offensive head coach who was there, so we really don't know how much of a say he had in the actual offense being run, but that is the situation he goes into now as well. He's not going to be, like he talked about in his press conference, changing up the offense completely. He's just going to be looking at what they can do to make it slightly better and calling the right plays to put guys in a good spot to compete. So, I mean, we'll see how much of a difference play calling makes as opposed to an actual completely new offensive playbook. But I don't know. I can't help but be pessimistic at this point in the year.
Yeah, and let's just be transparent. We do not expect much to change in terms of you know offensive success. I mean, we want to hope that it's better, but just okay. It's Wednesday when we were recording this. He was promoted. Was it yesterday or Monday?
I believe it was yesterday.
Yes, the decision to hire, or not hire, to
Promote.
fire Waldron happened basically Monday. I just don't understand. Why do you think Eberflus took like Monday to uh promote Thomas Brown? Because I mean, basically that was the best plan of action, because none of the other you know position coaches necessarily had play calling duties or anything like that. I mean, do you have any comments on that? Why it took so long?
I mean, I think it's really just a microcosm of a mismanaged organization. The fact that Matt Eberflus did radio calls and a press conference on Monday without having a firm decision, I mean, he very much heavily alluded to the fact that Shane Waldron was going to be let go, but he didn't outright come and say it, and we had to find out later on. I just think it was weird that he was allowed to go into that press conference without having a decision on that. It was really weird to watch, to be honest with you. And then, like you said, you should have right after the firing comes out say Thomas Brown's promoted. So it's just I
Yeah.
mean, another thing you can have a gripe with for the Bears.
Yeah, and let's just clarify here, like how we believe, not much in terms of offensive stats will change. I don't think anything, in terms of, will Matt Eberflus be fired is going to change either. I still believe, we probably still believe that he's going to be gone in 2 months. He should be gone now, but the Bears organization, is in shambles and doesn't have the guts to admit when they hired the wrong coach. So that's a little bit something they need to work on. But I don't think that would be fixed until possibly new owners come in.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
it's the same cycle over and over again. You draft a quarterback with a coach who's been there and not performed. You give him a year or two with that coach, then you bring in a new guy. He wants a new quarterback. He has a bad first year with the old guy, brings in a new guy, doesn't do well, and we just keep doing this. We should have
yeah,
cut ties with Eberflus the offseason, married a young offensive head coach to Caleb Williams and his development. And it's also like these rumors, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, about players wanting Caleb Williams bench, which we're going to talk about, weren't true. But the fact that Matt Eberflus hasn't outright come and say that he would never consider that, this goes to show the problem with having a head coach
that is a
with
problem
with
because
with no job security. Because at this point, Matt Eberflus is coaching for his job and he wants to win games. The best thing for the Bears as an organization is to have Caleb Williams continue to develop and play these games and work through some of these rookie mistakes he's having. But in the eyes of Matt Eberflus, who doesn't have a contract in place after this year, he wants to win as many games as possible. So it's just kind of a bad situation.
and like we've alluded to in many past in the past few podcasts. I mean, there's not a game on the remainder of their schedule that we see them
They
successfully
won't.
winning. I
Yeah,
mean,
they won't be favored. They won't be favored in a single game the rest of the year.
absolutely not. I mean,
Maybe Seattle at home if we squeak out a couple wins before then.
maybe the only way that I could see that is so either two things will happen for the Seahawks. They'll pick it up and start winning games again, or they'll have nothing to fight for and decide to bench starters. Because they're not making the playoffs. When you don't make the playoffs, you like to see what your backups do. When it comes to week 18, when you've got nothing to play for. So that's the only way that I see them winning a game again is if the Seahawks bench their starters. But let's get into the changes that were finally made. I mean, I see this change as a good thing because the offense can't get much worse than it already is. Uh, TJ Edwards did a interview on 6670 the score yesterday talking about Brown saying the dude is an absolute workhorse. He's a hands-on guy who wants to see everything that the players are seeing. A guy who truly loves what he does. I know he's going to bring some juice, and that's quoted from TJ Edwards. It's good to hear a positive outlook from one of the Bears leaders because we have not had a lot of that this season. Another reason I see this as a good thing is Brown learned from Sean McVay and was even the assistant head coach in 2021 with the Rams. Players also voted him number two in the top offensive coordinator NFLPA survey last season. Now, that's kind of a little bit surprising because of the stats that were given during his time as the play caller for the Panthers because they were pretty bad. Um, they were at 29th in EPA per play, 28th in success rate, and 32nd in pass rate over expectation, and scored 9 or fewer points in 4 of their last 6 games. So that's not not great. But hopefully with this improved, you know, weapons, those numbers are better, but only time will tell. So, what are your thoughts on that, Jack?
Yeah, just a couple takeaways. First off, it's nice to hear, like you said, players talking positive about something going on with the team. I feel like any time we got any news regarding Shane Waldron, it was always negative. And
Hmm.
just week after week of press conferences from guys in the offense, particularly DJ Moore, not being very convincing in his support of the coaching staff. And that's the guy you just signed to the richest extension in Bears history. So to have
Yes.
him not fully on board was a little bit scary. So it sounds like by what Edward said today, like people do respect him, and he hopefully should be getting a little bit more out of the guys. But when you listen to his press conference today, he did pretty much every time they asked a question about how last year in Carolina compares to this year in Chicago, he consistently brought up how the situations couldn't be any more different. And I do tend to agree with him. For as bad as we felt this season has gone, Carolina won what, 2 games last year?
Yes.
Like we're 4-5. We've severely underperformed. We're a hail mary away from being 5-4, which it happened. Obviously, you can't take it away, but that is a
Uh-huh.
play that
Hmm.
you can easily look at and say, okay, one thing goes the other way, whatever. But I just hope that if nothing else, he is a guy that people want to play for more than they wanted to play for Shane Waldron, because I think there is something to be said about having a coach who can galvanize the players and make them want to play for him.
Yes, yes, I can agree with everything that Jack just said. Another thing that actually I really like in terms of what Thomas Brown said in his press conferences when he asked where he's going to be when he's calling the plays, because you can call plays up in the booth or on the sideline. Shane Waldron was on the sideline. The only time that I'm, okay with uh, play calling being on the sideline is if you're a play calling head coach because you need to be on the sideline. But when you're a head or when you're the offensive play caller, in terms of where I personally believe it's better is in the booth because you can see everything from
Mm-hmm.
a bigger perspective. And
Yeah.
and Thomas Brown saying that that's where he's going to be calling plays from just makes me feel, I don't want to say like really confident, but a little bit more confident in his play calling ability because he'll be able to adjust from things in my personal uh, personal thought. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point. I don't know how much of a difference it'll make. We'll see, but it does seem
Yeah,
like the
we'll
logic.
see at this point.
Yeah, but I mean, it does seem like the logical thing for an offensive play caller to do, especially when there's no problem with calling down to the sideline and getting communication with your quarterback and with your offense. Like, that's not a very hard thing to do in today's age.
Hmm.
Uh, the last thing I'll say on Thomas Brown's press conference was I just liked how confident and quick he answered questions. I think that's more of just like a personal thing. I get frustrated when people are at pressers, especially coaches and people who do interviews for a living and are hesitant to answer things. It just makes me not confident in them. So, if nothing else, I feel like I'm confident in him as a person and at least somewhat as a leader, if not as a play caller as a whole.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good thought. Now, of course, with the good comes the bad. When he was uh, with the Rams, he didn't, or when he was with the Panthers, he didn't start out with play calling duties because they had offensive minded coach Frank Reich, who gave Brown play calling duties, and then took it away from Brown, and then Brown got it back when Reich was fired, and like we reiterated, uh, the Panthers scored 9 or fewer points in 4 of their last 6 games, and had some pretty bad stats in terms of uh, playing success rate. Now, when you look at the Panthers last season, they never had any weapons for Bryce Young, and to be quite honest, they still don't. We as Bears fans can only hope that he can light a spark into this offense. You know, again, we don't think much changes, and we'll be looking to start fresh at the beginning of the offseason. But let's hope that Brown can make this offense look decent so we could get a good offensive mind to come to Chicago and bring out the college version of uh, Caleb Williams. But so like, one thing that was reported that we actually that we were actually able to debunk in the last couple days was veteran players wanting to bench Caleb Williams uh, in favor of undrafted free agent Tyson Bagent. And actually, I read on Twitter that wasn't a benching; it was more of like giving him time to learn. But either way, I kind of still see both of those things as a mistake because the only way that a rookie quarterback can get better is if he gets meaningful reps. And Caleb Williams is still getting used to the NFL and has no offensive line. Uh, I don't think Bajent would be doing much better if he was behind center. What are your thoughts on that, Jack? Um, uh, so yeah, I'll let you go into that.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of just goes back to the fact that I hate quarterback controversy. I had a lot of friends, I think I mentioned this in a podcast around when the time happened of the Justin Fields trade. I had a lot of friends who were upset with how little we got back for Justin Fields and said they would have rather have kept him as a backup to Caleb Williams this year. And
Hmm.
I think this is a prime example of why you never do that. Caleb is the guy you drafted number one overall. He is the future of the franchise. You better hope he is if we're going to be any good anytime soon.
Mm,
But the fact that people are calling for, and this is no disrespect to Tyson Bagent, he is a professional football player and a very good backup quarterback in the NFL. But he is
yes,
a second year undrafted free agent player with half of the talent that Caleb Williams has. So while he might be a little bit more successful in the short term because he has more experience, if the Bears are going to be good in the future, like you said, it has to hinge on Caleb Williams' development. So I think that would just be coaching malpractice. And if that were to happen, I think Matt Eberflus would have to go. And at this point, I think Ryan Poles would have to go in the offseason too, because he is the one who hired Matt Eberflus. And obviously, we released Nate Davis in the last couple days. And more and
yes,
more of the decisions that we have made personnel wise and player wise, other than that trade with Carolina, have not aged particularly well,
yes.
other than Montez Sweat as well.
Yes, all good points. And actually, I'm gonna come back to you on a question with that. Uh, but um, now this rumor was debunked about veterans coming to the front office to say that they wanted Agent to start. But if I mean I understand that Kayla or players might be frustrated, but like I was wondering like if this rumor was true. I for sure hope that it wasn't DJ Moore who started was the first to come to the front office because he's tied to Chicago for the next 6 years because he has uh, well, the rest of this season and then another season on his Carolina contract, and then he signed a 4-year, $100 million or $110 million extension with the Bears this past offseason. I don't think a player would sign that type of contract to only come forward and say he wants the backup quarterback throwing in the ball because last season that happened and his stats went down dramatically, and his stats right now aren't very good. So I don't think he wants them to get worse. But my question to you is, so I every time that a head coach gets fired, I always think I see if the GM get a second shot at it. Do you believe that Brian Poles deserves a second shot to bring in another head coach after what he's done to keep Eberflus around when hypothetically he could have hired Jim Harbaugh or Ben Johnson last season when they were bringing in Caleb.
Yeah, I think it's hard to have a for sure answer just because we don't know how much of a role ownership played in that decision to keep. I mean, we would have had to pay a pretty penny to Harbaugh or Ben Johnson last offseason, and who knows if ownership was willing to do that, and that may have handcuffed Ryan Poles into staying with Matt Eberflus. But just looking at it from my perspective, Ryan Poles, Matt Eberflus, and Shane Waldron all have the same agent and representation. Uh, the fact
Yeah,
that we haven't let Eberflus go and it took this long to let Waldron go, and the fact that we brought Waldron in after interviewing Cliff Kingsbury, after the comments that you heard out of Seattle from the different wide receivers that we brought up and
that's a good
kind of
point.
we kind of brushed it off a little bit, hoping that it wasn't anything serious. But when you look back at what Jackson Smith and Jigba was saying, and a lot of those guys out of Seattle, it wasn't positive about Shane Waldron. So part of me leans towards no, especially because of some of the personnel decisions. Like I mentioned, the Caleb Carolina trade and the Montez Sweat trades were great, but we've also given up essentially a first round draft pick for Chase Claypool. We signed Nate Davis to a very hefty contract and did not reap the benefits of that whatsoever.
Yes.
We had Velus Jones, his first draft pick was quite literally a fail. I mean, he's no longer on the team. And you can't really point to, I mean, obviously there's a few guys we have drafted who are very big impact players, but there are also some misses we've had in the draft. So I wouldn't say that's necessarily been a strong suit of the Bears in the last couple of years. So I think the jury's still out. Right now, I'm going to say I don't want them to because we've lost 3 games in a row and I'm mad at the Bears and screw them. But I mean, we'll see at the end of the season. I'm sure my mind will change again. I'm not going to lie. So
So wait, you don't want them to
I,
fire
I I
Ryan
do
Poles?
want I as of right now I would like them to fire Ryan Poles and just start over GM head coach, but at the same time my opinion might also change and I also worry that if we made the switch at GM and head coach they would want to bring in a completely different quarterback and just reset us again and
Yeah,
like
and when
I don't want to do all that.
you did that already, basically, you're you. I mean, so you'd go from the hypothetical generational talent to a possible middle of the road option.
Yeah,
Because
I don't
there's
it's
no
not a great quarterback
star
class.
stud QB in this class, and but I oh god, I can't ask you this question because I didn't let you prepare for it. But
Go ahead, I'll give you my best. I'll give it my best shot.
okay, I'm gonna give you a shot in the dark here. So if we do this where we fire the head coach and the GM, so what GM and head coach combo would you bring in? Is the question.
I yeah, I am not going to lie to you. I know a decent amount about coaches in the NFL. Front office wise,
GM,
I
sorry.
am completely in the
Yeah.
dark. Like I know the guys who are the general managers of good teams because you hear their names consistently.
Mhm.
But we wouldn't be poaching a general manager from another team. It'd be another guy who's under somebody who I frankly just have not heard of. I'm not that in depth with my
Sure.
front office knowledge, so I feel like I don't want to give an uneducated answer to that question. But I
Like
appreciate a shot.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that again, it's my fault. I didn't think that we were going
Don't
to
worry
talk
about
about
that.
this. But like, if you brought in Ben Johnson, for example, see the thing about that is if we brought in Ben Johnson, my question would be like kind of what the Giants did. Would he say, okay, if you hire me, you have to hire this front office person from the Lions? First of all, would the Lions allow that? Is a good question because you'd be having two important uh, franchise pieces go to a division rival, and then based on how it's looked in New York Giants, would it would it work out? Is the question that I would have for
Yeah,
this hypothetical statement. Um,
yeah.
it's hard to think about what what could happen. I personally I don't see Poles getting fired because, like I said, usually GMs do get two shots when it comes to head coaching hires. Ryan Pace got it, and well, he when we had him, he looked much worse than Ryan Poles, but
Did he
maybe.
have three actually? Did he
Uh,
have Tressman, John Fox, and Nagy?
oh crap, he did. I think. Let
He
me
was
look
there for.
that up.
When did he get hired?
When did Ryan Pace get get hired as Bears GM? 2015.
No, see, he wasn't there for Tressman then.
No, okay, so he did get two though. He got
He had Fox, and Nagy.
Fox and Nagy,
Yeah,
and no, I was gonna say because so what's his name? Jay Cutler was still the quarterback in 2015 and 26. No, that's not right. Oh God, I'm I'm blanking on whoever the quarterback was, but
don't worry about it.
yeah,
We're
we don't
digging
need to
into a
talk
lot
about
of
that.
stuff that we did not
We
prepare
don't need to talk
for.
about that.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think that's going to be our podcast for our second podcast for the week. We will have a third one on Friday, where I actually uh, bring an old teammate of mine from high school football on as a guest, who is uh, probably one of the biggest Packer fans I know. He uh, knows everything there is to know about football. I am gonna ask him some trivia questions that no one our age would know because we are in our 20s, and and he could answer a question where his grandpa was the only one that was alive to probably answer this question. So that will be fun, and we'll talk about the Bears versus Packers rivalry, and talk about that game, and so that'll be on Friday. And we hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good Thursday, because we will see you Friday.
See everybody.